All right, guys, we're going to take a course 101 in Federal Regulations, ACDBE, Airport Concessions, Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. And this is important because, one, it is required by our grant assurances. There are certain regulations that we as an airport agree to comply with. And two of those regulations are 49 CFR Part 26, which deals with construction, and the other is 49 Part CFR 23, which is what we're going to talk about here, which is airport concessions. The Airport Concessions Program, or ACDBE, governs the participation of airport concessionaires in the concession activities of airports receiving federal financial assistance from the AIP, Airport Improvement Program of the Federal Aviation Administration. There's a definition down below that it's 51% owned by the ACDBE or a combination of ACDBEs in order to qualify as a going concern which is owned by an ACDBE. There's the other program is the Disadvantaged Business Program. We're not going to talk about that, but it is a for-profit organization, again mandated by the federal regulations, which is at minimum 51% owned by a disadvantaged business enterprise. This is what I wanted to talk about and kind of focus on. When we did Terminal D, these regulations had not come out. We were operating under an old set of regulations that were promulgated in 1999. And from 1999 really until 2005, March, when these rules came out, the FAA, DOT were working on what the concessions regulations would look like. And so these rules came out in March of 2005 after we went through the process on Terminal D. And the reason I bring that up is there are going to be some changes in the solicitation process and our expectations based upon these new federal requirements. The regulations took effect April 21st, 2005, and they apply to us. And again, they apply to DFW because we are a recipient of federal financial assistance under the AIP program. First of all, there are two qualifications that relate to being certified as an ACDBE. One, business size standards. And although it's not up here because each industry group has its own gross revenue formula. So if you're a car rental company that's minority owned, your size standards in terms of business size are going to be different than for a concessions, retail, food and beverage. For concessions, retail, and food and beverage, it's 30 million gross sales. So if you exceed 30 million gross sales, you exceed the business size requirements. In addition to business size restrictions, there is also a personal net worth requirement. And that personal net worth requirement is basically you must not have a personal net worth that exceeds $750,000. So that is the requirement. So you have to meet both requirements in order to qualify as an ACDBE. If you exceed the personal net worth requirement, yet you are within the confines of the business size requirements, you don't qualify, and vice versa. If you're an ACDBE and you have a business that exceeds 30 million gross sales on an annual basis, then you don't qualify. You have to meet both components of the test. Now, this was previously not required. The application of the P&W, which is personal net worth, and I'll just refer to it on the acronym if you don't mind, was applicable to Part 26. It did not apply to concessionaires until the 2005 changes. Your new worth, again, must not exceed $750,000, and there are certain exclusions that apply. You can exclude up to $3 million of encumbered or to be encumbered assets. So if you need that operating capital to invest in your business, to either expand or start the business, that money is basically an exclusion, and you cannot count that money, or they permit you not to count that money towards your personal net worth. In addition to that, assets exceeding $3 million would be counted toward your personal net worth. In addition, there are two more exclusions. The interest in your business and your residence do not count toward your personal net worth. If you're going to use this $3 million exclusion, you have to show the asset is used for collateral for a loan, or you have to document build-out costs and other capital investment needed to begin or expand your concessions. You just don't say, I need this. You have to actually prove it up. Personal net worth is adjusted for community property in a community property states. Spouses are not required to complete the personal net worth requirement. Contingent liabilities do not reduce the personal net worth requirement. And retirement assets are reduced to present value and included in determining your personal net worth. And you must use the SBA financial statement in order to be qualified. Your business ownership, so there's the personal net worth requirement, and then there's an ownership requirement. Your business must be owned 51% by socially or economically disadvantaged individual or individuals. You have to have real and substantial continuing ownership. You have to have real and substantial capital contributions to acquire the ownership. And this is an area that really has changed. When the concessions program first got started, there was a use of passive investments. And really the new regulations shy away from, my personal opinion, passive investors, and really are forcing the airport entities and the concessionaires to be active participants in the business. And passive ownership simply is not sufficient in order to meet the requirements anymore. So all of these go to that requirement of basic, you're qualified, you got skin in the game, and you are actively engaged in the operation of the business. You have to be independent, the power to direct your firm. You can't have a situation, and I've seen it in some, I'm trying to not walk around, it's hard. I've seen a lot of situations in which you will have a ACDBE, or formerly a DBE firm, create a corporation. And the corporation will have voting privileges which are not reflective of the ownership privileges, i.e., you'll have 3 people or 4 people or 5 people whose votes are needed in order to make decisions regarding the future direction of that corporation or to encumber assets. That does not meet the control requirements. That individual must have 51% control. That ownership must be reflected in the board of directors and the voting powers that are associated with the operation of that corporate entity.